If there's one thing better than watching Doctor Who, it's rewatching Doctor Who. It's always fun to go back and revisit some old favourites, as these trips to the past are often full of new realizations that didn't hit you on the first time through. I'm Crispy with WhoCulture, and welcome to 10 Small Details You Only Notice Rewatching Doctor Who. Number 10, RTD'S signature shot. Think back to the beginning of the first episode that started this mad journey we've been on for the last 18 years. Series 1's Rose. We start in space, focused on the moon, before the camera slowly pans to reveal Earth. We then zoom down onto the planet below, straight into Rose Tyler's bedroom. Now recall the opening of the Christmas Invasion. This is another episode that begins with a shot of the moon, before the camera slowly pans to the left to reveal the Earth, and we zoom down onto the planet below. Army of Ghosts and the Runaway Bride also begin with this shot of the moon, before the camera slowly pans to the left. Okay, you get the idea. It's the same thing. It's not just that these shots look the same, they are the same. All 4 of these episodes start with identical sequences, but since they were all broadcast months apart from each other originally, it's not so easy to notice it the first time around. The End of Time Part 1 begins with a similar transition of moon into Earth, as does Matt Smith's debut episode, The 11th Hour, which was potentially new showrunner Stephen Moffat paying tribute to his predecessor. Number 9, the Shepherd's Boy cameo. Thanks to a masterclass in solo acting from Peter Capaldi, Heaven Sent is one of Doctor Who's all-time great episodes. The 12th Doctor is eventually able to escape his revolving prison thanks to a little help from a tale called The Shepherd's Boy, which was also the name given to Heaven Sent's signature music track, composed by Murray Gold. This music is intrinsically linked to both Heaven Sent and the 12th Doctor. It later doubled as his regeneration track, so it's very odd when you realize that it first appeared in the show 2 years before Heaven Sent even aired. As our 3 heroes are coming up with their plan to save the Time Lords in the Day of the Doctor, a snippet of what would later become the Shepherd's Boy can be heard playing in the background. Oh, yes, that is good! On the Day of the Doctor's soundtrack, this piece of music is called This Time There's Three of Us. Audiences at the time had no idea how important it would become in just a few years. Number 8, very subtle arc hints. One of the calling cards of RTD's first go-around was his tendency to leave a trail of breadcrumbs throughout each series, all leading to a huge reveal in its final episodes. It started with multiple appearances of Bad Wolf in Series 1, then the regular mentions of Torchwood in Series 2, Harold Saxon in Series 3, and various disappearing planets in Series 4, capped off with the ominous prophecy he will knock 4 times in the 2009 specials. It's much easier to spot these clues when you know what's coming, and some of them are so subtle that you definitely need to rewatch them to clock them. In the Big Brother house in Bad Wolf, there are prints on the wall that look suspiciously like Dalek bumps, foreshadowing their arrival later in the episode. In Series 4, Silence of the Library shows a drawing of a blonde woman on a wolf on the wall in Cal's house, a very subtle hint about the impending arrival of Rose Tyler. Possibly the sneakiest arc hints can be found during Series 8's Flatline, where Missy is sat in front of a door that bears a cutout of a Cyberman's eye. How did we miss that? Well, it's a very dark, very brief shot, so there's no way of knowing that this was teasing the Cyberman on your initial viewing of this episode. Number 7, shush. The Doctor has many wonderful abilities that help them take on the worst that the universe has to offer. Superior intellect, regeneration, an array of gadgets and gizmos. Oh, and there's also the power to stop people talking. Matt Smith's 11th Doctor reveals this unusual trick in Closing Time, where he's able to silence underdeveloped life forms like James Corden and a baby with a simple shush. The 13th Doctor does the same thing in the War of the Zontarans. But you'll only notice on a rewatch that the Doctor displays a similar power way earlier than those 2 episodes. During a particularly tense exchange between the residents of London Street and Fear Her, the 10th Doctor yells, "Fingers on lips," which causes a group of grown adults to stop and follow his orders like they're toddlers. Okay, fair enough, this clearly wasn't intended to be a shushing power at the time, but who's to say we can't apply a different meaning retroactively? Number 6, all the reused locations. Doctor Who has always had to stretch its budget thin, which has led to a ridiculous number of quarries being filmed in over the years. It's not just quarries though. The show regularly visits many of the same locations in different episodes, and attempts to pass them off as a unique setting each time. These are much easier to spot on a rewatch, and it's always a fun kick when you notice them. The exact same garden pops up in both The Girl Who Waited and is the setting for Missy's Promised Land in Series 8. More stealthily, The Girl Who Waited also recycles the interior of the New York Hospital from Series 2's New Earth. There's also a very recognizable set of steps that appear in the Silence of the Library, Forest of the Dead, The Big Bang, and Spyfall Part 1. And who could forget Bad Wolf Bay popping up in The Time of Angels and Dinosaurs on a Spaceship. Basically, if there's a nice spot somewhere in Wales, chances are Doctor Who has been there at least 3 times. Number 5, unintentional 11 references. prepare for the most obvious statement of the century, but anyone who's watched Doctor Who will know that the 11th Doctor, Matt Smith, came immediately after the 10th Doctor, David Tennant. Not to be confused with the 14th Doctor, it's still very confusing. With that in mind, it's interesting to look back on some of Tennant's old episodes with one eye on his future self. In the 2009 Easter special Planet of the Dead, the Doctor accidentally calls a restaurant called Pizza Geronimo while trying to contact UNIT. Geronimo, as we would later discover, is the catchphrase of a certain tweed-wearing Fez enthusiast. A much more bizarre call forward revolves around everyone's favorite cuddly stargazer, Wilfred Mott, who lives at a house number 11. You can just get a glimpse of this in the Sontaran stratagem, before it's made clearly visible in Journey's End. In the End of Time, a lot was made of the fact that some unexplained force was drawing Wilf and the Doctor together, culminating in Ten's heartbreaking sacrifice that led to his regeneration. So what if this force was at play years before Wilf and the Doctor first met, drawing Wilf to house number 11 as a cruel wink to the role he'd play in the 10th Doctor's future regeneration? It's obviously just a coincidence, but as headcanon, it kinda works. Number 4, the cringy bits. For all of the positives that become more apparent on a rewatch, there are also some things that stand out for not aging quite so well. A lot of these revolve around CGI, the majority of which are palatable at the time, but now looks incredibly hokey by modern standards. Some of the worst offenders you might have picked up on the second time around were the Stingray swarm in Planet of the Dead and a single, very naff shot of a Cybermat in Closing Time. There are also many moments that are clearly aiming for high drama, but ended up coming across like pantomime. There's the Master's resurrection during the End of Time Part 1, never dying, which is hammier than a hog roast. And don't get us started on the guy buzzing like a bee in The Unicorn and the Wasp. I mean, I love this show. We're now at a point where a lot of New Who is over 10 years old, so it's expected that little things like this will stick out more during a rewatch. But hey, for every minor flaw, there's a brilliant bit of acting or a clever line of dialogue that stands out just as much. Number 3, familiar faces. While Doctor Who has pulled some big names over the years, John Hurt, Ian McKellen, Kylie Minogue, it has also given a platform to some of the stars of tomorrow. Biggest examples I can think of are probably Carey Mulligan in Blink and Andrew Garfield, our future Spider-Man in Daleks in Manhattan. But arguably the more satisfying people to spot are those lesser known actors who pop up in multiple roles, and will have you pointing at the TV screen on more than one occasion. Before Vinette Robinson's brilliant performance as Rosa Parks, she was Abby in the Series 3 episode 42. Chipo Chung, who played Chuntho in Utopia, would appear in the following series as a spooky fortune teller in Turn Left. And then there's Dan Starkey, who has played about 1,000 different Sontarans over the last 18 years, plus Ian the Elf in Last Christmas. But possibly the most surprising realization is when you clock that Rani from the Sarah Jane Adventures played the Skithra Queen in Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, or even that Martha's mum played one of the cat kind in New Earth. It's a small world, hey. It's easy to miss these things the first time around, but when you work your way through from the beginning, you really do notice just how many actors the show reuses. Number 2, 12's Bookends. In a rare break from tradition, the first shot of Peter Capaldi as the 12th Doctor wasn't immediately after the regeneration of the 11th, but rather during the epic climax of the 50th anniversary special, The Day of the Doctor. As the various Doctors from across history work together to save Gallifrey, the Time Lord High Command announces that there aren't 12 Doctors here, but 13. Cue the most dramatic set of eyebrows in television history. Capaldi would take on the role full-time for 4 years before handing the TARDIS keys over to Jodie Whittaker. Following a brilliant speech in Twice Upon a Time, 12 lets himself go, but not before throwing all the way back to the very first shot he appeared in. The final glimpse of Capaldi as the Doctor during his regeneration into number 13 is almost a mirror image of his debut in The Day of the Doctor. Eyebrows are front and center. The big difference this time around, instead of anger and vengeance, those eyebrows show kindness and acceptance. Turns out he was a good man after all. Number 1, sign of things to come. Earlier we mentioned several small clues to major story arcs, but the foreshadowing doesn't stop there. Upon a rewatch, you'll hear lines of dialogue that hit completely differently the second time around, as they, unintentionally or not, refer to events and moments that are yet to come. In Series 6's The God Complex, the 11th Doctor asks Amy, "What's the alternative? Me standing over your grave?" Which is precisely what happens when they part ways in The Angels Take Manhattan. I'm fine. I'm not sad, you are. In The Woman Who Lived, Maisie Williams, Ashilda, warns the 12th Doctor that Clara will die one day, saying that she'll blow away like smoke. When Clara does die later in that same series, black smoke pours from her mouth. And then there's the fate of Donna Noble. In Forest of the Dead, she tells Dr. Moon about visions of her real life while trapped inside a computer. She tells him, "I saw the Doctor," to which he replies, "Yes, You did, and then you forgot. A few episodes later, and Donna would forget everything about the Doctor, as her time in the TARDIS came to an end. This probably wasn't an intentional piece of foreshadowing, although with Russell T and Stephen Moffat, you never know, but it definitely hits different when you know what's coming. And that is it for our list. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure you check out 10 Secrets of the Sonic Screwdriver while you're here. You can also find myself by looking up Crispy Pro on YouTube. I've been Crispy with WhoCulture, and in the words of the 10th Doctor, I mean 14th Doctor, allons-y.